announce that we are starting. And okay. Let me check. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Please say something.
Testing.
Perfect.
Something.
Perfect. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let us know if the sound and the video quality is good enough. Hölgyek, urak, tudassátok velünk, hogy a videó és audio minőség jó-e. I will check myself as well, just to double check everything. Should I, by the way, send you my Twitch channel so you can follow up with the chat as well?
Yeah, that would be great. Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, let me do that as well. I've sent you on Discord. Okay, let me sit into my original position here and let us know, ladies and gentlemen, if we can start the actual interview itself. Let us know. Please let me know. Hölgyek, urak, tudassátok velünk, hogy kezdhetünk-e. Szóljatok, hogy jó-e minden. Let me know. Let me know, and then we will start. Let me know. Also, can check it. I had some internet connection issues, so that's why I'm double checking everything, but hopefully it won't affect our
Seems great on my end.
No, it was fine. Like, it was stable. It's just there was like one outage, so that's I'm double checking everything, you know, because it can be very annoying when like it happens. Okay, it seems to me that everything is fine. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Maybe I will add some. Fine. Okay. Okay, it's working. Jó minden? Okay, they are also saying that everything is working fine at their end. Okay, Ramon, let me know if we can start here. Let me know if you are down to start.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Nice. So welcome everyone in the very new episode of my Dev Live show. I'm today joined with Ramon, who is the creator of many awesome FMV games like the Case Files, and I'm very honored and very thankful that you joined us for today's episode. And like I'm always saying, let's start with a little bit of introduction. So please introduce yourself for us.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm Ramon Hamilton. I'm currently a game developer that pretty much focuses on interactive FMV. And then quick little backstory. I actually am a filmmaker originally. That's actually what I did for like the overwhelming majority of my career, which makes sense. But I've always been a gamer, you know, since literally I can't remember a time when I didn't have a gaming console. So it's always been a part of my life. And then, yeah, just recently in the last like 5 years or so, started to marry the two, the filmmaking with video game making. And here I am now creating FMV games and loving it. Yeah, so I'm very appreciative to be on here with you all today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you also for the introduction. Thank you. So my very first question would be, what was your very first contact with video games as a player, if you remember those times of your past?
Oh, you're going to make me sound old. All right. So my very first interaction with the video game was Spider-Man on the Atari 2600.
Okay.
And it was probably the most addictive game like ever. And it's funny because, you know, back then this was like the early 80s. and it was like, this mind-blowing thing, get to play as Spider-Man. And then I tried revisiting the game like a couple of years ago, and I
I
was like, oh
see.
my gosh, this is so primitive. It's like the most basic of basic. But yeah, that was my first game, is also my first
I see.
console, and yeah.
I see. Back then, did you know that you would like to do or make games? Did you have any
No, not
feeling
not
of?
then, like when it really when the thought of like, oh, it'd be so awesome to make games, that actually came around in the PS1 era.
Okay,
So it's been honestly, growth of games in my lifetime has been phenomenal.
I
Like,
see.
because I think back, it's funny that you asked that question, because I think back to the Atari 2600. That was amazing at that time. That you can play video games in your home and not have to go to an arcade and put quarter after quarter. Um, but the quality was obviously ridiculously low and very primitive. And now, in fact, I'm actually playing Resident Evil 4 remake right now in VR. And so the fact that, like, the graphics look phenomenal, but now I'm like in the game, is just, yeah, it's just absolutely mind blowing.
Sure.
But for me, the step up, so for me, I saw, the Atari to the Nintendo Entertainment System was a huge jump. And then from there, I actually didn't do the Super Nintendo. I was a Sega
I see.
Genesis
I
kid.
see.
So from there was another huge jump. But then when we went to PS1, it was like 3D, and you're moving around these environments in every direction, with like Tomb Raider. The very first Resident Evil game was actually my first PS1 game. And that was when I was like, wow, like they're telling a story. The person who's consuming the story has complete control over where they're going. It was just like, yeah, this would be amazing. However, it literally never seemed like something I could do.
I
It
see.
just seemed like you had to be this super smart programming person
I see.
and understand all sorts of stuff. So I kind of was like, yeah, that'd be awesome to do it, but that's kind of where the dream ended. It was like, yeah, but I can't do that. That takes a different caliber of person to do something like that.
I see. Do you think like this was the case that you like went back to this childhood dream of yours after like being in the movie industry?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There's no question about it. And how I actually got into it was the very first FMV experience I made was actually for it was the Oculus Quest. No, the Oculus Rift.
Okay.
And this was 5, 6 years ago. I can't
Okay.
remember the exact time frame, but roughly in that time frame. And at the time, I wanted to tell like an interactive, um, just kind of film story, and
I
I
see. I
actually
see.
had the rights to a really really amazing true story. And not necessarily amazing in a good way. It's actually kind of a tragic story. It did have a good ending, but the so I had this, I had the rights to this amazing story, and I knew I wanted to do something interactive with it. And at the time, I was at a GameStop, and that's when the PlayStation VR, the very first one, had come out,
I see.
and they had a little demo table, demo booth.
Yeah.
So I hopped in there, and I was immediately like, oh, okay, yeah, this is the next level. This is and my mind immediately was like, wow, I can actually like put the player in the story, So long story short, I was like, okay, I want to make this interactive film in VR.
I see.
And so I was basically forced to learn how to do it. I had to, I downloaded Unity, and complete beginner, had zero knowledge of programming. Well, I had a little bit of HTML programming, but
I
even that
see.
was self-taught.
I see.
Um, and that, so but I knew exactly what I wanted to do, which is always a helpful thing.
True.
So
True.
now it's
True.
just a matter of like looking up tutorials, asking people on forums, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? And then, yeah, I was able to create it, released it, and that was essentially like the start of the developer journey, really.
I
Yeah.
see. I see. So more personal question from me would be: do you think like your family members and close friends supportive about your decision that you started going with the journey of video games, and also back then with movies, making movies and also making games? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, and I'm very, very blessed in that regard.
I see.
My wife, who's actually my partner with my business in our company, so she was very, very cool with that because obviously making films for so long, and then hey, let's try a totally different approach with filmmaking. But very supportive, and so that just made it very easy.
I see.
I have two, both teenagers, on the younger end of teens, but they're teenagers, and they're both very supportive. In fact, they help test things, and they're actually credited in the most recent Case Files game because they literally actually helped with testing, and also giving feedback, because I'm actually developing like a prototype right now that's it's actually not FMV. Um, but it's still interactive story. I'm always story first. That's I'm a storyteller. Um, but some of the mechanics of things that I'm not familiar with, because it has some sort of mechanics that are like top down games like Stardew Valley.
I see. I see. I see. I
Um,
see.
so and I'm not necessarily sure like how does inventory system work in those kind of games, and so I'm asking my kids that do play those games, and helping develop it. So I have been very fortunate that I have a very supportive family in every aspect, and if anything, we're just like, yeah, let's keep going, let's come up with new concepts, new stories, new mechanics, new ways that we can do FMV, and it's awesome. It's pretty liberating.
Do you think, by the way, it's important to have a supportive background in your life? That's for you. That's for your life.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do because if it's funny that you asked the question, like a supportive family. So I don't know how supportive my family would have been if I were, let's say, 15 years old and wanted to get into gaming, game development specifically. Um, and part of me is like, there may not have been as much
I see.
encouragement and support as I have, in the modern time,
I see.
and that could have possibly squashed, my dreams. So maybe it's fortunate that I didn't try to pursue it at a younger age
I
and
see.
actually did it at an age where support is there. Now that being said, I am a firm believer, like if there's something that you want to pursue, whatever it is, um, you know, just give it your all. I mean, like 'cause you can always, you might succeed, you might fail. You might be able to make the next big blockbuster. You might make a complete dud, right?
That's true. That's
That
true.
can happen in any
True.
and any aspect when you're creating things. But the one thing you can control is you can control whether or not you gave it your all,
True.
right?
True. Very
You can
true.
control that. You can
Yeah.
always say, I know I gave it my all, or I know I didn't, right? Either way,
True.
you know that. So whether or not there's support, if it's something that you want to pursue, and I don't know if I would have been wise enough when I was a teenager to have this, mentality.
I
Now
see.
I
I
do.
see.
But even if I didn't have the support, I would find ways to still pursue it because it is something that's important to me.
I see.
Obviously, I don't want to piss off my family, but finding that kind of balance of
Balance.
like, all
Yeah.
right, look, I still want to do this. I'm going to do this, but still maintain that work life, balance, basically.
I see. I see. So you mentioned that story always comes first for you as a movie maker, as a filmmaker, and also as a game developer. So I believe in this statement of mine that all of us creators who create our own craft always intend to put our inner self, experience of loss, love, and everything that we experience through our past. Is this statement of mine true for your journey with movies and games as well? How do you feel about that?
Yes, absolutely,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
In fact, my most successful project, which was actually a film that I made,
Okay.
we did the film festival circuit in 2011, so it's been a while. But that was a very, very personal story, and it was a fictional tale, but it pulled from a lot of personal experience.
I see.
Um, and even with the Case File series, there's I'm in the United States, and we do have a lot of mixed feelings regarding law enforcement, and the judicial system and the legal system. All of that. Here, um, and me, I actually did a lot of work in that area
I see.
before game development,
I see.
and using case files as a way to show just the complexities of what it looks like. There are, sometimes there are cases that are very clearly black and white. It's like, okay, this is clearly wrong or whatever. But there are a lot of shades of gray, and what I love about games as opposed to film, in film, I have to communicate and make the choices myself.
I see.
So if I'm trying to tell a story about a complicated case, for example, that has a lot of shades of gray, I have to communicate those shades of gray. I have to communicate what the characters are going to do in regards to making decisions, and the consumer of that content just has to accept it. They have to just watch it.
True.
But with the games, is I can create these areas that are complex, many shades of gray, and give the choice to you. You make
Yeah.
the moral choices, not me.
Yeah.
And so I love that, because
True.
it just, we talked about like what I loved about in that first film I made was I can put the person into the story, and that's part of putting them into the story. It's like you are the detective, you're watching these interviews. There are choices that you need to make.
True.
Some of them are very objective, is there this evidence that they did or this, that they used for this or that? But then some of them are very subjective, and that's a call that only you, the player, gets to make, and then that guides where things go.
It's like a moral
And I
test,
love
right?
games give you that, which movies don't.
True, true, very true, very true. It's like an exact moral test of the choices of the players, right? That can
Yeah,
be
yeah,
shown through
and
games.
in those cases, there's, I don't want to spoil anything, but in the current case files that's out, which is the behind closed doors episode, there is a very intense moral choice, and there literally is no right or wrong, you know. Now it will be debatable, Someone could say, "Oh, this is the right way, and this is why the other way is wrong." Someone could say, "Well, no, this is why this one's right and the other one is wrong." And again, that just becomes subjective as to where your moral compass guides you.
True, and all
Basically,
the experiences are additional to that moral compass, right? That's what we experience through
absolutely.
our life. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you believe, by the way, that consumers of any type of media and art form will be able to like understand the creator's exact message and vision? Because I believe so. Because I believe that when a person is creating something, he has a vision, right, and an influence why he is creating that. Like, for example, your story with the case files. But do you think like an consumer can be like educated or having those experiences that you had as a person in their life, similar to your life, and connecting on a 100% level with you, with that message, I mean?
Yeah, I think it's possible.
Okay.
And now we're getting into kind of direction of creation. So I think yes, obviously any creator has some sort of vision. That's why they want to
True,
create
true, true,
whatever
true,
that thing
true,
is.
true.
Um, and I feel that if they stay true to that
Okay.
vision and everything that they are creating throughout the entire process is connected to that vision, then yes, I do feel that the consumer, when playing it, is really going to understand
I
the
see.
vision, the message, and the true intent of the story. Where I think the reason why I said it's possible is because it can also go the other way. I think if you have a very strong vision, but then you make compromises along the way, and those compromises break your vision or deviate from your vision, then you end up having a final product that isn't really your vision. Its roots are in your vision, but then the branches kind of went all over the place. And I'm sure, I mean, we've all seen movies or played games where you're like, I don't know what is going on. It's like, what was the vision here?
True, 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 true.
Or like what's even worse is when you see like, oh yeah, I get the vision, but man, they just went and they just didn't stick true to it, and it could have been
True,
awesome, but they just
true.
went all over the place.
Sorry. Yeah.
Um, so I think a lot of that is up to the creators, again, just staying true to the vision throughout the entire process, then yes, the end result will absolutely resonate and connect because it's going to be so potent with that vision.
True, true, very true. Yeah, I totally agree with you. How do you handle this situation in your projects that you mentioned now? How are you able
Which
to always to stay true to your vision with the whole process of creating games or movies?
yes, and that is by choice.
Okay,
So in games, I've actually never worked in a commercial type setting,
I
for
see,
like a double A or triple A
I see,
company.
I see, I see,
In film, I have worked, for larger studios in film and reality
I
TV,
see, I see, I see.
and the you know they're in those, you typically have a single role, right? The larger vision can come from a director, producer. It can even just come from the company. Like we want to make movies like this that attract these kind of people. All right, now everyone below us, you make that happen. Um, and so when that kind of happens, you obviously can't just do your vision because you're just one piece of a larger pie. Um, and for me, I found that a little bit um, discouraging. Like I have stories that I want to tell,
I see.
um, and really the only way, at least initially, to do that was to be independent.
True.
Now the downside is independent comes with way less money. Sometimes no money, um, but the trade-off is the freedom, the creative freedom.
True.
So having been able to work in both, now, yes, now I just tell the stories, that we want to tell. It's like my wife and I, we have stories, and we tell them, we craft them. We do get community feedback through our Discord. If we're like, hey, do you guys think this direction would be better, or this, or what do you guys think about this mechanic? And those are things, because they're games, so the players, it's going to be the players that are controlling, the way things work in those. So it's good to get their input. But in terms of story, yeah, we just tell the stories we want. But again, comes that trade-off, right? It's, then you're independent, you're having to find ways to fund it, you're
True.
then also having to find ways to monetize it.
True. It's way
Whereas,
harder
if I
without
work
a
on a
company.
film for
Yeah.
Warner Brothers, they're marketing it, they have the money, I just do my job and I get
True.
my
True.
paycheck.
True.
And then in independent, that you're everything. You are the marketing, you are the story, you're everything.
True.
You have to, and so, but for me, it's worth it, even though it can be a little bit difficult financially at
I
times,
see. I see.
because for me, it's far more important to tell the stories that I want to tell than to just be a part of someone else's story and get a paycheck.
I see. I see. Have you always had this mentality that your vision is more important and your freedom is more important to you than getting a paycheck? Have you always had this mentality, or is it something that developed out through the years of
I
your
have
life?
had it, and I think part of that is, it's fortunate that my dad, owned his own business, and so I just kind of grew up with like, yeah, you can just, do your thing.
I see.
Is it easy? No. In fact, one could argue it's ridiculously harder than just
True.
having a job.
True.
Um, but it's definitely possible. Other people do it, and so why can't I? And so yeah, I would say it is something that I was fortunate enough to kind of just be raised in that
I see. I
mentality.
see. I see.
I of course have, had jobs along the way. That's almost impossible not to. Um, but they've always kind of been like stepping stone. I'm doing this
I see.
to get me here
To get
with
there,
that
yeah,
objective.
yeah.
Once I'm here, I can do my thing. Um, so yes, I have always kind of had the, yes, my freedom, not just creative freedom, but also like my life freedom is is much more important to me than, for argument's sake, than the dollar or money.
I see. I see.
Now I understand that's easier said than done because people have financial
True.
obligations and
True.
things like
True.
that.
Very true. Yeah.
So
Sadly, we
not like,
should
oh
say,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. It's so there's, there's always challenges and roadblocks along the way. But there's also ways to even counter that. If I mean, I've been in situations where like, okay, I have to have a job, I have to make money, I can't just do whatever I want. But even while doing those things, nights, weekends, I'm spending time on the things that I want to do. So it doesn't have to be a complete sacrifice. It
True.
just might mean that, oh, I'm going to have less time
Less
to
time,
focus on
yeah,
my
yeah.
creative. But at least I'll still have that creative freedom.
True.
Um, yeah, all things are possible. If you can carve out the time, really,
True. True.
and the dedication. That's another hard part.
True. Were there times, by the way, throughout all those years when you started making games when you like wanted to give up, although you had this mentality of like not sacrificing your freedom, but you still like wanted to give up?
Um, Not really.
Okay.
Um, and I think that's just kind of how I'm wired.
Okay.
Um, and for me, it's like when I have something that I personally want to achieve, I'm just going to do everything I can to achieve it. Does it mean it always works out? No. But I'm again going back to like at least I can control that I gave it my 100%,
I see.
regardless of where it went. I was able to do that. Um, Now there have been times that have been very, very discouraging. And the question becomes, should I keep doing this?
I see.
Not do I want to finish something? And I'll give you a very honest example. The first Case Files game, which was Case Files: The Death of Paulette Williams, and I put a lot into that. We had it on PlayStation, Steam, and on the Quest, so it was also in VR. Um, and it was actually, like the first project I said that I did on the Oculus Rift. That was way more of a movie that you were inside of with very, very minor kind of interactivity.
I see.
Because for me, the main objective at that point was to put the person in the movie, which for me was like a mind blowing experience. Um, but this Case Files: The Death of Paulette Williams was the first one where it was like actual game mechanics, like 3D space, 3D controls. You move around, pick up, case file evidence, interact with this or that, whatever. Um, and so it was like, I say that's the first like game,
I see.
not the first interactive experience I made, but it's like the first game. Um, and we didn't hit the mark. You go on Steam, it has mixed reviews. On PlayStation, last I checked, it was definitely below, or just above a 3. Like just above a 3 out of 5, which is not the kind of scores that I'm used to. I'm used to things doing well. And I realized like, well, things did well in film because I really knew film. I'd been doing it for over a decade, and so I understood that medium. And it was really an eye opener for me. Is like, okay, I have to really like. It's funny. I play games. I've played games my whole life. But I had to really think, okay, how do you make the game so that the player is satisfied with the gameplay loop and the mechanics that they're doing throughout that loop? And I wasn't really thinking of it from that perspective. So, you know, look at it purely from statistical standpoint, it was a relative failure. It's not rated positive or even mostly positive. Like there's like one review. It's funny, the negative reviews are the ones that always stick with you.
True.
But
Sadly.
like one review was, this sucks. Okay, it's like, okay, well that's very helpful. And obviously nobody wants to hear that, right?
True.
About
True.
something that
True.
you create.
True.
But people on the internet can be cruel at times.
True.
But that was a big moment where it was like, can I make games? Like, can I actually make games, or do I just not understand this medium because I just created something that about half the people that play it don't like? Again, that's not a really good feeling. And so I said to myself, I'm like, okay, I'm a strong believer that failure is a good thing. It's sometimes hard to acknowledge it in the moment. Even now, when that happened, it was like it hurts, to have something you made, and and even like publications and their reviews were not very kind. Some were, but some weren't. Um, and but I am a firm believer that failure can be a good thing. There was a movie called Meet the Robinsons. I don't know if you ever heard of that. It was a Disney movie a while ago.
Yeah.
But it kind of the moral of the story is like it's okay to fail, because
Sure.
failure means that you tried, right? The easy escape is to not try. If you don't
Sure.
try, then you can't fail. Um, and I tell my the same thing. I'm like, look, it's okay to fail because it means that you tried. Now, what's not okay is to fail and then not try to learn from why
That
you failed.
failure. Yeah.
That's not, if you just fail and just walk away and say, okay, I failed, I'm a failure. A, you're not a failure. You failed, but you're not a failure. And so the key thing is to look at what mistakes were made. Where did you literally objectively fail? Take off your own ego and just read the reviews, and you start to see there's a consistent pattern. Oh, people didn't like this. People didn't like that. Or people really liked this. Let me keep that. And so after, a little bit of being down and a little depressed, come bounce back and say, okay, let's look at this. Let's analyze this because I want to give this another shot. I at least let me try to learn from my failures and see if I can make improvements. So we took all the notes that we got from all different platforms, piled them into a list, and honestly, there was a very consistent theme of the things that people didn't like, and there was also a consistent theme of what people did like. So we kept the kind of things that people did like, and then we said, okay, these things that people didn't like, how can we do them in a way where they do like it, and that's where the Discord community is super helpful because we poll our audience, and I do think for anyone who's an aspiring developer, um, having some sort of a community, and we started a Discord with 0 members, so and it's not like we have a massive amount of people. There's maybe like 50 something people in there, but there are people that really like what we're doing. There are people that test the games, and provide feedback. So we took our kind of checklist of notes and said, okay, hey guys, this is what we're looking to improve upon. What are your thoughts? We got their thoughts, blah blah blah, and then we made the second one. And the second one is the one that's currently out. And well, I guess they're both out, but it's the newer one that's out. And there's no question, it is far superior to the first one. And now on Steam, it's rated positive. I think out of 24 reviews, which is not bad for an indie game that released, about 6 months ago. Um, there's only one negative review, and it's the PlayStation reviews are good. There's they do the stars. There's no reviews,
Yeah, there are stars. Yeah.
as well as what in the press. And one thing that I was very proud of actually is there was one guy who he has a publication called the Game Horde,
Okay.
and he gave the first game, like he does like a 0 out of 5. He gave it a 1. and the whole review was just about what is wrong with this game. Um, and so I was really, really concerned to give him a key for the second game because I was like, oh gosh, this, but you know, we can't or we shouldn't pick and choose, who we're getting reviews. We need, it's helpful for us to get honest reviews, because yes, in theory, we not send keys to people that reviewed the first game poorly, but that's not really helpful. We don't then know, did we improve in other people's eyes that thought the first game wasn't good. And he ended up giving us a 4 out of 5 on the second game, and that was a really cool turnaround.
Sure.
And I was really happy to see that. And what I also liked is he was really articulate about what improvements were made and why they were better from the previous one. Um, so I know that's a long-winded answer to your question about do I ever just feel like giving up? I don't in the middle of a project because if I'm making the project, I'm going to make it. But in between, yes, especially when things haven't gone the way that you were hoping they would go.
I see.
And it's honestly, as I think back to it, it's similar to to the very, very first film I made, actually, which objectively is a bad movie. This was made in like 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. And again, it is objectively a bad movie. And I had to learn, how do you actually make movies well? And so it was the same thing. You know, it hurt. We submitted it to film festivals. We got accepted to 0. And it forced me to again be like, okay, why did we fail?
See.
Like, what did we do wrong? And then let's try something different and learn and improve from the mistakes. And every film from there was just better and better and better, whether it was creative wise, or just, you know, reception wise, from film festivals and publications and things like that. So, but yeah, when you do hit those moments of failure, they're hard, you know.
See.
And what I would say though is, because I do know, like, working on a project can take a while, and you might hit that point where it's like, am I even making something good? Are people even going to like this? Should I just cut my losses short and stop? And the biggest thing that I'm always a firm believer in is, let other people tell you no. Don't you tell yourself no. Don't say to yourself, oh, they're not going to like this. Make it, put it out there. And then, you know, if people say, no, I don't like this, okay, at least you put it out there, and now you actually know,
Sure.
and hopefully you can gain some information as to why. But if you never put it out there, and you can't power through those moments that are really difficult, and you just want to give up, you're going to have those regrets. You know, you're going to
True.
look
Very
back and you're
true.
going to be like,
Very true. Yeah.
really wish I'd done this or that. And I do have regrets, absolutely, where I wish I'd done this, wish I had done that. And that's a big fuel for me to not give up, because I don't like the feeling of regret, you know.
See.
As far as I know, we have one life to live,
True.
and I want to do the best I can with it, you know.
See. Thank you, by the way, for your very honest answer for my question. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
Really.
Were there any times or any aspects of these negative or examples of these negative reviews you mentioned where you like had to sacrifice anything that was very close to your vision, or was your perfect vision about that game? So were there times and examples of those negative opinions and reviews where you like realized that, okay, it's my vision and I'm not sure if I would have to change on that, what they said, it's not good in my game?
Um, yeah, I think one thing, I don't know if I'd say sacrifice, but it did force me to alter
Okay.
my approach. So one of the complaints with the first Case Files game is that the interviews were way too long.
I see.
And some of them are, you know, 10, 11. I think there's even one that's like 12 minutes long. Um, and and for me, it was like, well, it's as long as it needs to be. You know, I'm writing the scene, and I'm not thinking about time. I'm just writing the scene, and this is how it ends up. And so, but I saw that complaint a lot, you know. And so at some point I have to say, okay, well, my vision is not working with people, you know. So I can keep doing my vision, but if I keep doing my vision, I'm not gonna improve with the way it's received by the audiences, by the players. Um, so I had to switch my approach, and I was actually very cognizant of the time with the second game, um, where I was like, okay, so in screenwriting, it's on average, every page that you write works out to about a minute to a minute and a half of actual screen time.
I see.
So I was very much like, okay, any scene that I write can't be more than 5 pages. That was, you know, so basically the scenes won't be more than 5 or 6 minutes. And they're not in the second game. There might be one exception to that, but overall they're not. But it ended up actually being a better thing, because I could sell it in smaller chunks, so it satisfies people not having to sit through, you know, a 12-minute interview. They can, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever. But then it also psychologically gives them more content. So the number of videos in the Case Files 2 increased a lot, but the overall runtime is about the same. but there's this illusion that you have way more content. Um, and again, the number of videos you have, yes, it's drastically higher. It's like 3 or 4 times the amount. But the runtime, the total runtime, when you take it all, it's maybe 20 minutes longer in the new one, and that's only because we have 2 more suspects that we didn't, So there, and that, but that also helped because that was another thing that people said is like, oh, I wish there was more content, wish there was more
So
clips
you
to choose
combine
from.
those two, right?
Yeah. So the story and the writing is still long. It's just broken up into chunks, which yeah, it gives more smaller, compact, digestible scenes, but also then satisfies having more content to click through. So I think there's like 30 clips. Actually, there's more of that because there's branching. So some of them have 2 different things that could be there depending on what you choose. But in any given playthrough, at the end of the game, there's about 30 actual clips. And I think in the first one, there was like, I don't know, 8, So it was like a drastic increase.
True, true. It's interesting that you were bringing up this topic of like people not being patient enough to like watch through a 12-minute interview, because I had this topic in my past like dev live shows about the story oriented games, that sometimes people are like, just clicking through the point and click games or clicking through the cutscenes of the games because they are impatient by consuming those story oriented clips or any form of storytelling. And it's very weird for me because in my opinion, it's like, people are not just that they are not patient enough to consume those stories, but really it's like people not understanding, like we talked about it before, the vision of the creator and the game of the vision, or the vision of the game, right, itself. Because like if you are down to sit down and sit through and play through the whole story, you are playing it for the story, right? Especially FMV games, they are mostly for
You
the
should be.
story. You should be, right? Exactly. So
Yeah.
why are you suddenly impatient by viewing a longer interview or a cutscene, right? So it's, for me, it's like a bit weird, of a complaint
Oh
from
yeah,
people,
and I agree,
in my
and that's
opinion.
yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. Like it was weird because it's not like I had a vision to create
That's the point
long
of the game,
scenes.
right? So you're making it and it's like you're writing it, right? You are not,
I
like you
just
said
I
it, you
just
are
write
not
it and
thinking of the time, right? Because it's not
oh
like
yeah.
you're trying to limit something into a box, right? It's just you're
It
writing a
was just trying
story.
to tell the story,
Exactly,
and
exactly,
it's
exactly.
as long as it
Exactly.
needs to be, but it
Exactly.
was yeah, people no, and it's similar to, um I see sometimes people that like you said, it could be like a point and click game and there might be dialogue and they just click next, next,
True,
next, next,
true,
next, and they're
true,
not even
true.
reading the dialogue,
True.
you know.
Like, what's the point of playing
Yeah,
that game, right? Because it's a
yeah,
story
or you
game.
try to
Like,
play a story-based game and you skip all the cutscenes,
exactly.
and I mean, I guess they just like the game mechanics and don't really care for the
It's very
the
weird, in
ins
my
and outs of the
opinion,
actual story.
for a story
I
game.
don't know. It is a very interesting phenomena because you know, I've been gaming since forever, and when I play games, I like to soak in the world, the
True,
story,
true.
everything.
Me too, yeah.
One recent example is the Silent Hill 2 remake. So I just finished playing that. I don't know, maybe like 2 weeks ago, and the game, just like a lot of games now, they have the little timer at the end that shows you exactly how long you played it. And I think my time was around like 28 hours ish, something like
Okay.
that. And I was like, okay, cool. And then, I go on to like Reddit and the Silent Hill subreddit, and people are sharing their times, and I'm seeing like 12 hours, 15 hours. And I'm like, how is that? Like, because I also, it's not like I was like, oh, let me be as slow as possible. I just played the game. I read the files or things that I saw. I wasn't trying to be slow, but I'm like, how on earth did you beat this game in like 12 hours? Like you must have literally been running
True,
through every single scene throughout the game. I can't think of any other
true,
way,
true.
and for me, it's like, oh my gosh, this game is, I love the environment. I love the story. When there's dialogue, not only do I watch the cutscene, but then, I take a moment to try to like think like, huh, what was that about? Like I don't just move on to the next thing,
True, true,
and
true.
clearly people are just they have to be skipping the cutscenes and they have to be
Exactly.
running all over the map because I can't think of any other logical way of how
True.
you can, take less than half the time that I'm doing, which is crazy. But it was also comforting to see that there were people that had similar times to mine. And it did seem because that it was a little bit of the older, um, and this isn't an age thing. This is just it could just be like in that particular group. But it did seem like a lot of the older people um, spent more time than some of the younger gamers. I found that to be interesting, and it could just be coincidence, or it could be that there is uh, a difference in the way that generations play games. I don't know.
True, true. I would add that it would also like be the thing about like passion, how passionate are people about
Mm,
games, and
yeah,
also like how they play games, or for what reason they play games. Because I believe that nowadays it's a lot of people are also playing games, like you said, not just for the story but the game, but the gameplay itself, right? So probably they
yes,
play horror games for like, for example, with your example, Silent Hill 2 remake, they play it for like the horror aspect and the survival aspect, the gameplay side aspect of the game, and not for the story itself,
not
in
for the
my
story. Yeah,
opinion. Yeah,
which
exactly.
is hard for me to take because it's such a good
Yeah,
story.
for me too. Yeah, I know, I know, I know, I know. I hate when my friends skip cutscenes. I can tell you that. Like, I have some friends who do that, and it's like so interesting. And it's funny also because one of my friends recently like started to play games in a total different way. He started to play games like making everything 100 completion in his games, and he realized that it's a way different experience for him because he's reading through all the files in every game that he can collect in story-oriented games, and he said that it's way different now. Like, it's a totally new experience. He's understanding the story more, the lore, the world that he is set in with those games. So it's really interesting to actually see these changes of people, that they realize that, okay, now it's more content, right? So people complain about content, but it's there most of the time, right? It's just they are lazy to consume it, or they are rushing it
They
through.
don't want, yeah, yeah, and they want to just move on to the next shiny thing.
Exactly,
That's
exactly,
another big thing.
exactly, exactly. Okay. So, again, a more personal question from me would be: how have you changed as a person from all those experiences that now you worked on games, and also you worked on movies in other territories of your life? How have you changed as a person? Sorry for that.
I think the biggest change is being able to put things into perspective,
Okay.
um, not not be too overwhelmed or too consumed when things don't go right.
I see.
And that doesn't necessarily mean games. It's also just in life because life is obviously not perfect. Um, and obviously there are clear exceptions in every direction. Things can go horribly wrong and you have zero control over it, and that's obviously understandable. But I'm talking more about kind of the medium spectrum of things. Um, but I used to. It sounds weird, but I used to take things way too seriously. Um, and it's not to say that I'm not serious now, but I would sometimes put arbitrary deadlines on myself, and if I didn't hit them, I'd feel really bad.
I see.
Whereas nowadays, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna work on this today and tomorrow, and if I don't finish exactly what I was trying to do, it's all right. There's always another day, um, you know, um, and same thing with dealing with adversity, and like we talked about the first case files game and getting negative feedback. Again, not taking it too seriously. Like sometimes it's hard, but like if you can step away from yourself and step away from it and just kind of look at it from like third person observer of yourself, your project, and everything that relates to it, or even just life. Again, step back. Your partner broke up with you, and it was really, really, really important person in your life, and you don't know how. Um, you will move on. Like there's always, time does not stop. Time will keep going, and you can always choose to stop yourself in time, um, or move with the time and just kind of go on to the next thing that time gives you. But for me, yeah, it's like when you hit that moment of adversity and difficulty, again, stepping back, trying to look at the big picture, and when it comes to games or films, I always remind myself, it's like, it's just a game. It's just a movie, right? Okay. What's going wrong? What can I do to fix it? And if there are things that I can't do to fix it, I mean, that happens, honestly, that happens more with movies where you make an edit, you screen it to maybe a test group, people watch it and they're like, oh, I really wish you could do this or so that. And you go back and you're like, I can't, like I don't have the footage to do this or that. I have, um, but again, stepping back and just realizing it's not the end of the world, So I've become way more kind of, I guess, chill about
I see.
things,
I see.
and not get too stressed out because again, it's a much larger world. There are people dealing with very, very serious things.
True.
Um, and at the end of the day, who cares if people thought my game sucked? In the bigger picture,
True. True. Very true.
what I can do is look at it. Okay, a lot of people said it sucked. Why did they say it sucked? What can I do to improve so that the next one doesn't suck? Um, and that's it. That's all you can do, right?
True.
There's nothing else. So why stress about it? Why it's just not worth it because again, in the grand scheme of life, it's just a game, just a movie. I
True.
understand people are passionate about it. It's they put their heart and soul into it. Um, and that's fine. That's what gets you through making the project and getting it out there. But once it's out there, I mean, it is what it is. And sometimes that can be a hard pill to swallow when it's not the expected result that you were hoping for. But again, in the grand scheme of everything, it's okay.
True.
It is
True.
okay.
Very true. Very true. And I feel like it would be way in a more ideal world we should live in. At least with my opinion, if there wouldn't be any like harsh opinions about like anything, right? Not just you games, but to other media forms as well, or just talking to each other with people. Because I feel like I'm always saying this, that when I started like the very first episodes of my dev live show, my goal was to like educate people for a high level of understanding video games, because I believe that we are living in such a cancel culture era right now where like most of the games are being canceled by a lot of players, and it's really bad to see that it's not just they are sharing their opinions anymore, but it's like them being harsh and even like threatening the creators of some games. And it's crazy to me, because me as a player who was always and still is passionate about video games, it's really like my passion. I'm always joking with that I'm the dying out dinosaur and the kid who is still loves play with every game he sees, but it's true for my life. And it's for me, seeing these people being so harsh when they like review games, even if it's like just a player or someone who is a journalist or a Twitch streamer or YouTuber, for me it's like very weird to see that. Because I always say this, that we are living in a time and an era now where we like say that games are forms of art, and we appreciate games as forms of art as well, but still we end up like scoring, which is crazy to me. Like, we do not score paintings, right? So why we score games
We do
then?
not.
Then
Hmm.
the second one is that we like, I always say this of my example, that when I was a kid in school, we used to like review poems, right? But we never gave scores to poems or books. We just analyzed them. We never said that, I don't know, this author sucked or this book sucked, right? Or this book was very bad. So it wasn't like that. We analyzed it, and by that we started to understand the vision, the message that was there, right? Because I believe that in all of the crafts that are there, even if it's games, movies, music, there is a message. There is a hidden message which we should pursue, right, as a consumer, if we are down to like that in any way, right? But if you start to being like harsh about it, you start to getting out these negative opinions, very negative opinions, which will like affect those people, and not just the creator in a bad way, like the creators will start to question themselves, but also like the other consumers will start to question, is it worth to buy that thing, right? Game or movie, watch the movie. And it's a bad thing, because at the end of the day, I think that the ultimate goal would be for all of us consumers start to understand things and then decide if we are down to buy that, right? But if somebody will decide in our way in our life that we should not like buy those games or watch those movies, it will be like a sheep-minded people around living, and that's what we are doing now. If a lot of people are like listening to their favorite streamer, they will end up not buying a game because their favorite streamer said that that game sucks. It's just crazy to me to see this, right? Because it really ends up
Yeah.
like these people are not letting others to form their own opinion, which is crazy for me at least.
No, and I 100% agree. And, I think too, I'm a very thick-skinned person. It really takes a lot to crush my spirit. And I, have also grown up, seeing the internet and the way that we communicate completely change.
True.
Because now people are, kind of hiding behind the anonymity of their keyboards,
True.
and whatever their avatars are, which makes it easier, because, let's say you took all the people, let's say in, that reviewed a game on Steam, and the good and the bad, all of them, even the ones that say this sucks. And if you brought them into a room where everyone's in person, their expression and communication of their thoughts are going to change.
Sure.
For the most part, there still might be that one person that's going to say, "Yeah, this sucks." But I think for most people, the way that they communicate their analysis, really, right, which could be an analysis that got them to a result of not really enjoying the content. But it would at least open up the dialogue for, further analysis. Why?
Sure. Why?
For me, those things are more important.
Exactly. Like there's always a why, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. There's always a why. And,
yeah.
I'll say this, I don't know, I'm assuming the people, watching this play games and may even want to create games, but people should be more mindful, of what they say. I've seen developers, I've seen actors, one in particular, not going to mention names, but in the FMV world, there have been some very harsh critique that cease a person from continuing to do the thing that they love, because they may not be as thick-skinned. It is very hurtful. And at the end of the day, they say, well, why the hell should I do this if people are just going to be so mean and so cruel about what I'm trying to create? There's always a human being behind every creation, and 99% of the time, the human beings aren't going out there because they just want to make something that's shit. They're going out there because they have a vision, they have a story, they have a part, they have writings, whatever that they are doing their best on and they want to share. It doesn't mean it's always going to hit the mark 100%.
And it doesn't have to,
fail.
right? So it's not the ultimate goal.
Oh, it doesn't have to. No, exactly. But like for me, when I and I tell my kids this. I also I don't teach now, but I used to teach quite a bit. I used to teach like game development and filmmaking, and these are arts that I'm teaching, and so the kids are always reviewing each other's projects. And the thing that I'm always emphasizing is like, if you have feedback, especially if it's negative feedback, offer solutions. Don't just say, "Oh, I didn't like that."
True, exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
Why didn't you like it, and what would you have done differently? Because that's helpful.
True.
But just like, "Oh, this story is stupid," or "That actor is horrible,"
it doesn't help at all. Yeah.
How can a creator improve with that?
True.
Literally nothing. Whereas if it was like, "Oh, I wish that actor, could have connected more to the material and made it more authentic," or I wish they, had maintained better eye contact. These are things that we can improve on, right? We can take that feedback and it's like, okay, let me take that in mind. But when it's not constructive and there aren't any suggestions on what could have made things better for you, you're honestly better to just keep your opinion to yourself, because it's literally not helpful at all.
Not just not helpful, but like you said, it makes even worse, right? Because some creators will stop their creative journey. And I had this example in my life too, where I like contacted the developer and I wanted to make an interview with her, and she told me that she like had these death threats of her making the game because like they analyze it in a
Which
totally
is
wrong
crazy.
way, and they understand totally wrong. Like she didn't even want it to like have that vision out. It was way totally different vision that she imagined. It just turned out being like that, and they like wanted to kill her. And it's crazy to me that there are so crazy people out there who are, for not liking something, wanting to kill another person. It's crazy to me, right? Like it's I don't know.
Not
Like,
just you. That is
yeah,
absolutely crazy to me too.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Like at the end of the day, we are all have our own stories, right? And like you said, it's I totally agree. It's not the main goal, to have always successful stories out there, right? It's just sometimes that we want to have a relief, right? Because I don't know, we had a breakup with our girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, and we just want to have a relief by sharing our stories, because maybe it will be only one person who will be able to relate to that story, but that one person at the end of the day matters. And that's what people forget, that if it's only one person who we can help in their very hard life, it's worth it, right? So yeah.
So that's a. I wish everyone reviewing media and content had the same mentality as you. That
Thank
would
you, thank
that would
you.
make,
I really
that would
would.
make things a lot.
I really would like to change the industry, and it's funny that I can also relate to your life and mentality in a way that I was working for a lot of video game journalists companies here in Hungary. I might mention it to you in private, and I always have these bosses who told me like to underscore my reviews. And it's funny because I have some reviews in which like the writing part of the review is very positive and very like analyzing in method, like I said about, like we used to do that in with poems in schools. But my score is way under like that, base, thoughts and opinions that I mentioned in my review. And if you read the article itself about the game, for example, Gollum is a perfect example for that. I wrote like a very positive review about Gollum, and I gave it a 7, and they underscored to 2 out of 10. It's like 5 score difference, right? It's stupid.
Wow.
And they told me that cannot do what I want to do, because like it's stupid not to have next to Metacritic. So my score is like not near or similar to Metacritic scores or to average scores. But if you think of like Metacritic is a website which gathers all the scores and make an average, right? So average is made, it's simple math, right? Average is made from
But
higher
somebody
scores
gave
and
it a
lower
7.
scores. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you like
Yeah.
write, I don't know, 2 out of 10, it will be 2, right? Where is the average then? Like it's still an average, but like there is no competition between scores. And that's what I hate. And I feel like most of the like video game journalist websites, not just here in Hungary, but in all cases, so all around the world, it's true that most of them are very corrupt. And that's why
Mhm.
I like, I did not want it to sacrifice my freedom. I really like still am on the mission to change the video game industry and the mentality of the players, because I feel like I said before, it matters to me because I'm passionate about video games. And I want, I know it's an ideal word, but like you said, I totally agree with you, is that like if you form an opinion, form it like in a way that it's not hurting others, right? Because why would be your ultimate goal to hurt others with your opinions? It's not helping, right? And it makes things even worse. Why do you want people, for example, to live in fear just because you did not like a game? It's stupid. At the end of the day, it doesn't make any sense to me. And it shouldn't, right? This should be the thing that should be cancelled, not people canceling games or others or movies or anything or anyone.
Yeah.
It really takes
I
away the
think,
fun part, right?
yeah, you pose an interesting thought, like, and I don't think there's any outlet that does it, any gaming platform. Um, the concept of zero score, like imagine on Steam if all you could do was just leave the review.
Exactly.
That's it. That would be a very interesting take, because I think there's also the lazy, right? They'll just give it a score
It would make people
thumb up
read.
or a
It would
thumb
make
down, and
actually
then just
people
write
read,
sucks.
right? So people could do
You know?
nothing but read, right? So it would educate people in this
Exactly.
way.
Yeah. No, I think that could be a very interesting approach. Because yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. People don't, nor should they create just for success.
Sure,
Like if I wanted to create for success, purely for success, I would still work in the studio system, right?
sure,
Those are movies that are going to be
sure,
in the theaters
sure,
worldwide with big name actors and blah blah
sure,
blah.
sure,
That's success, so to speak. Um, but then I'm not creating with the passion, with the
sure,
personal desire to tell my stories.
sure,
It should be, yeah, people should create what they just want to create.
sure. That's the point of
And
creating,
that's
right?
okay. It doesn't matter what it is. They should just be
Yeah,
able to create without having to worry,
sure,
as you mentioned, in extreme situations where like someone wants to kill them because
exactly.
of something they created, like especially if it's something they created that's not harmful in any way,
Sure,
like,
sure,
that's, yeah, that is, it is. And honestly, I applaud you for trying to change that because, um, A, it needs changing, but B, it's a very, it's a very difficult task to
I
take
know.
on, you
I
know.
know.
But no, it doesn't mean you shouldn't take it on. If anything, hopefully inspiring others to take it on, so that there can be a larger community of people really
Sure,
trying to just educate, and change the way people communicate to others,
sure, sure,
in regards to things that they're creating, things that
sure,
they're sharing,
sure. Yeah, but because at the end of
'cause,
the
yeah,
day, it's not just about games, but talking to each other, right? So you will have to like educate yourself to
absolutely.
talking on a higher level to others and respect others.
Yeah.
So it really comes about the topic of respect of not just
Respect,
others,
yeah, and
but
proper communication.
what they
Yeah.
create.
It's
Yeah,
okay to disagree.
yeah,
It's okay
exactly,
to
exactly,
not like what someone else likes,
exactly,
but there's a certain way to communicate that in a way that
exactly,
isn't hurtful, but it's actually
exactly,
constructive. Is
exactly,
in all areas of life.
exactly, exactly. I always bring up this example of my life when I was a kid in literature lesson here in Hungary in school. We had to like exchange our like opinions in a form of writing down our opinions to paper, and we as we like started to argue with each other. We didn't say that you suck with your opinion, but we like changed the papers on which our opinions were written, right? And it should be like I don't know, be educated to the people that if you have an opinion, fine, you're fine with it to, share it across the world, but like be, respectful to others. Because at the end of the day, it would be like, life-changing situation, as you mentioned, and I have this example of mine where people can threaten, others and they will like, start not pursuing their dreams. And it's really what sucks, right? At the end of the day, if you use their terminology for saying our opinions, then it's really what
Yeah.
sucks at the end of the day
And we've
because
seen that, and you've touched upon it, that we've seen this a lot in recent times
exactly,
where
exactly. It's
creators are
there of
getting
it.
shut down, studios are getting
Exactly,
shut down, and
exactly,
these are people's lives, they have
exactly,
families, kids,
exactly,
homes, mortgage,
exactly. And
rent,
and
it's
it's like
like,
players don't
uh,
care or people don't care who are forming these opinions, but they should, right? Because it can happen at the end of the day to their life. Their boss will say you suck at your job and you're fired, right? So it's the same, right?
yeah,
It's nothing different
yeah,
from that. So it can happen to them. That's what people do not understand, that
absolutely.
it's not just about games, it's about everyday life. And I feel like for me it started to become more like um, important because like I said, it's not just about my everyday life, but it's games which used to be fun, and it's still fun to play games. But if I go online over the internet and read all these reviews from the people or from the journalist side, it's always like this sucks, this is bad, this is bad.
Mm.
But okay, are you trying to touch the positive aspects of the game or no? Or is just criticizing every game? And like, where is the objective based journalism, right, that we are all talking about? Nowhere to be found,
Yeah.
right? Nowhere.
Yeah, I don't know about in Hungary, but it's definitely not here. I tell you that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a huge problem in my opinion. It really kills the industry, and I think that companies now are more aware of it, but players still not. It's very funny because when I saw the tweet from Ubisoft CEO, he said something that A lot of players nowadays have way higher expectations that they understand what their expectation is truly is. And I always said that. It's very funny. I should somehow contact him and talk with him about it, because I was believing that's so, because I feel like a lot of players nowadays who are consuming games or any form of media, they have seen everything, right? They have seen all the phases of the video game industry going through and evolving, for example, with story aspects or graphical segments of the games. But they still have this high expectation, games to be good. But what is a good game for them? If you were down to be sitting them with them in a room and ask them what is a good game for you, they might not have an answer, because their understanding of a good game is like, it's a good game, but okay, what is a good game for you? What do you want from a game to be good? Or why would you pay, I don't know, $60 for a game or $10 for a game that is good for you? And they won't be able
And
to
that's
answer
actually
it.
that ties back to what I was saying earlier, where you know, making the game is very different than playing games.
Sure.
Like I played games my entire life. It's always been a part of me. But when it comes time to making a game, that question of like, yeah, how do you make a good game is not as easy as, oh, well, I
True.
play games, so now I can make a
True.
good game.
True.
Every game developer plays games. That's why they love games and that's why they want to make a game. Um, that's it's a whole different beast. And
True.
that there's no singular answer. As
True.
to, oh,
True.
this is the exact formula to make a
True.
good game.
True.
Because if there was, then everyone would do that, and
True.
then there, but then we would also have a very homogenous pool of games,
True.
which one could argue we kind of do have at the AAA level.
True.
There is not a lot of diversity in the kind of games that there are. Um, but it's there just needs to be a little bit more grace from the gaming community. In relation to all, creations, not, just indie or double A, triple A, all of
True.
it,
True.
there-
Exactly.
there's always human beings, hating on any large AAA company and negative review bombing, just because it's whatever, you're unhappy with something about the game. It's still, the implications are going to affect actual human beings.
True.
It's not necessarily going to affect the company much, actually, because they'll just cut whatever losses they need to.
True.
But it's going to affect just your average individual who's just trying to do the best they can artistically and
True.
creatively.
True.
And that's the part that sucks.
True. They have this belief also that, especially for the AAA companies, that they had to sacrifice their vision, and they are like, now a lot of them are in the safe play mode, where they are like, making the next Assassin's Creed, the next COD game, because like they have this fear of like, delivering something very unique, like they were doing back then. Because for example, with the Ubisoft, as a company, they were always delivering these very unique ideas. They are one of the greatest companies, in my opinion, or with my opinion, in the AAA industry. And they had all these crazy and unique ideas that were like selling millions of copies of games, because they were good games. But they started to, go on a journey where like they are still trying to deliver good games, but they are, in my opinion at least, I see this from the player perspective, understanding games, is that they are like, have this fear inside of them as a company delivering very unique ideas like they did in the past, because whenever they tried it, they get cancelled, right? A very new idea was always cancelled when Ubisoft released very unique games, especially nowadays. And people like wasn't saying that, okay, it's not working for me, but they said it. Like for example, Skull and Bones, it was a very unique idea, which came from like the Assassin's Creed fourth part, the Black Flag, and it was like, the shipping, gameplay mechanic, cruising with the ships, with the pirate ships, and it became a full, standalone game. And people, some of them loved it, some of them liked it, but a lot of them like disliked it and said it's a trash game, it's like a very bad game. And in my opinion it wasn't. And it's like, it really shows that a lot of people can like cancel, with their opinion, cancel a company's, vision, in a way that they are, trying
Oh,
to make
absolutely.
games. Because at the end of the day, they will say, okay, we need to make money, we are a huge company, we need to pay all those people who are, working for us. How do we do that? How do we, make games for really appealing for the community and for the players that had, with us, for years? And if they say that, okay, I don't know, it's working, then they will choose the safe play route, the safe play journey. And I think that's what happened to a lot of companies now. That's especially for the bigger ones, because I still believe that Ubisoft and all these bigger companies has all those very unique ideas. They just scared to release them, or they are waiting for the perfect moment when this cancel culture era and people will calm down a bit.
Yeah, yeah, and it stifles the creativity. True. Because it is. Yeah, there's a lot of validity to the power that gamers actually have, and I actually think it's counterproductive for the gaming community. Like, we should support new ideas and new concepts.
Exactly.
Because we should want more of that.
Exactly.
Because otherwise, the companies are just going to play it safe.
Exactly.
And you're just going to get more of the same old.
Exactly. And they will get bored, right? But that will be their cause of having these harsh opinions and not trying to understand the very new ideas. I mean, I remember those times me playing PlayStation 2 games, and they were so many different games. And now the indie scene is helping to deliver those very unique, ideas, and it's working, right? So that's the point. That it's very funny at the end of the day, because people's minds and players' perspective mind is very interesting for me to analyze, because people are not that harsh about indie games mostly. How they harsh about like AAA, right? And it's so weird to me at the end of the day, because why are you so harsh about AAA if you are not harsh about indie? Like, why are you not growing up into this educated person with a higher level of understanding that AAA is just more people, It's still that they have that vision, right? Because all the people are saying, or at least a lot of them, that, oh my god, these AAA companies are making it for money. Yeah, of course, because they have to pay the bills, right? At the end of the day, they will have to pay the bills, just like you as a player. But I'm totally 100% sure that those people are working, for example, with my example for Ubisoft, even it's like a gameplay programmer or an art style designer or anyone who is working like the development team, they are passionate about their vision and they want to deliver the best experience for the players. I'm totally 100% sure about it.
Oh no, yeah, there's no question. Of course, yeah, all of the artists and programmers and everything. I mean, they are 100% passionate about doing the best thing that they absolutely can. Sure. I think the problem that happens with the AAA companies is that the gaming community they can't go beyond the surface. To them, it's just
exactly
they're sending a message to the company, to the company, to the company. But the company is people.
True.
That's the part where you got to go further.
True.
With an indie game, it's different because people
People.
know.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's one person or three people. Yeah. They don't see the company; they see the people.
Yeah.
And so it's again, right? It's where there's like that anonymity, where there's no direct connection to a human being.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes it easier to just be negative because it's like, oh, I'm just shitting on a company. No, the company is comprised of hundreds of human beings that are all giving 100% of themselves to create whatever aspect of it, of the game that they're creating, or a film as well, and that's where you can maybe criticize the company or maybe not taking more risks, or offering solutions like, oh, if they had done this or that, and still simultaneously praising the people that worked on it. Now I haven't played Skull and Bones, but I've seen some gameplay and some images online, and I can safely say the artwork is done well. Like that for me, not even playing the game, that's one aspect that I can already say, kudos to those artists. That's a great aspect of the game. It's not an all or none, right? It's not like it just completely sucks. No, there's so many components too. I've seen movies that, in my opinion, were not very good, but they've had some very good aspects. Like it's like the cinematography. And
again, that's the analyzing part that I was talking about. How we analyze poems. Like, do you like this part of the book? Do you not, or you are not liking this part of the book? But it's still not like the overall experience. Once be able to say, yeah, the book sucks. Like it makes no sense at the end of the day, because it's a story that was told by a person.
it's also not objectively true. Like
Exactly.
there's maybe 0.00001% of things that are created that may have zero redeeming qualities, and even that I'm not sure of. So
Exactly.
there's always something
That's
there that shines.
shines. Yeah, exactly.
Always, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Okay, before I go into some more questions, are you down to answer some questions from the community, from the chat?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I
Thank
would
you.
love to.
Okay, let us know, ladies and gentlemen, if there is any question that you would like to ask. Hölgyek, urak, hogyha bármilyen kérdés van, nyugodtan kérdezzetek. Oh, okay. There were comments and questions as well. 55 kilogram said empathy is a key in everything, and I also think he said many times these online life-threatening words are coming from more anger than anything. It still sucks, but it speaks a lot about the people giving feedback. They are just frustrated, probably. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I always say
I
this
would agree.
that a lot of people are in this position of like, they have real life problems like we all do, and I think that our society do not educate people in a way how they should like not put their inner anger into like forming opinions, or how they respect and talk to each other. I think that's what not
I want to no. I
has been
agree.
teaching in school, in my opinion, right? So
Yeah, how to handle negative emotions and feelings, and
exactly.
I want to touch on that the commenter that stated that, because I think that's a very important thing in all aspects of life, and I 1000% agree. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about able to step back, right,
True.
and try to just objectively understand, right, and using the example of with the developer that you met and interviewed, and they talked about someone threatening their life. You have to ask yourself, okay, this individual is typing or whatever, they're communicating a death threat over not liking a game. Clearly there is something bigger that is wrong with that individual. It's not the game, it's not you, because that is what I consider a completely unhealthy response to disliking something. That is a completely over exaggerated response to not liking a piece of content. So clearly there's something wrong. I remember this was relatively when I first had moved to Los Angeles back in like 2005 ish. And I was in a Blockbuster. I don't know if anyone knows Blockbuster, but there was a movie rental place and video game rental place. I remember this guy came in there and he was so angry at one of the employees, he was berating him, treating him like just like complete subhuman. And the manager came out, and the way he handled it, he was like, "Sir, there is no way that you can be this angry about a movie. There just isn't. It is impossible." So it's like, why don't you like try to like put yourself into perspective here, because the way you're reacting about a movie being placed in the wrong aisle or section, the way that you're responding, there's no way that that level of anger is coming from that human mistake. That's impossible. And it was such an eye opener for me, because it was like, yes, when we have these types of responses or communication, it does say more about that person than it does about the content that they're critiquing. Because when you have such an unhealthy response, it doesn't even make sense. It just doesn't make sense that you would want someone to die because you didn't like their game. So it's like, dude, what is really wrong? What is really going on in your life? Because you're angry about something else. Something else is hurting you. It's not the game. It's not that developer. So as a developer or a creator, when we see those types of things, I think we do have to step back and realize, you know what? This isn't about me. This isn't about my content. This is a person who has larger issues, and they're taking it out on me. They're taking it out on my game or my content or my film, whatever it is. But it's not about me, because it's so so far on the spectrum of crazy.
True.
It literally can't be about you.
True. True. True.
It's truly about them.
True.
So I'm glad that someone made that comment, because there's so much truth to that. And it's sometimes it's hard, especially when the moment to separate ourselves and really objectively look at it and realize, okay, that person is off, and their critique, it's not helpful. And B, it's not even valid, because it's just so, again, on the far spectrum of crazy, there's no way they can actually that way because of what I did. you
Yeah.
know, now they might feel that way, but it's because of something else.
Yeah.
Definitely because of something else.
I also have an addition to this. What you have said just now is that I feel like there are some examples when like people will see themselves through a story in a mirror reflection, their own bad self. And I feel like, for example, Last of Us games were like that, and they criticized. A lot of people criticized, especially the second part of it, because they realized that they are viewing this game as a mirror, and they seeing themselves in the mirror, how they bad people in real life. And I feel like that's how these players can end up being very harsh about the topic or a game or the creator, and threatening the creator of the game, because they will see themselves in the mirror by playing a game or by watching a movie. Because even if it's like not conscious, they will, at the back of their mind, they will understand that it's about them, right? For example, if, I don't know, there will be a serial killer who will, watch a movie about how, a serial killer was a bad person, they will see themselves in that mirror,
Yeah.
by the forms of art, even if it's a movie or it's a game. And they will get mad most of the time. And I think that happened with the case of The Last of Us second part. Because there were some very, strict moral decisions that were made in the game. And I think that's
Yes.
why people were mad about it, because it's like on an emotional and moral level, they did not understand that it might be about them. It might be at the end of the day, they are just, those people who were in the game, And I feel,
Facing
I'm totally sure with that.
themselves that they don't want to face.
Exactly. Because in that society or in that world where zombies or monsters rule our world, they might be ending up being killers just for the food or the power. But in this society, they are not being able to do that. And this will be like a mirror for them to show that, hey, it's you who are having these thoughts at the end of the day in your life, and you are crazy, and change, please. So yeah, sadly I would say. And that's when it comes to what I said before, and you also said it, that communication would be key about it, right? To talk, to be very honest about yourself and what you think, right? And not being canceled also for that. Like you said, it's also true. Like if you have, I don't know, a story to tell it to, and you shouldn't be canceled for that story, right? If you are not hurting others, of course.
So yeah, as long as you're not intentionally trying to hurt people.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Minnie's having a question here. She's asking how hard was it to deliver or to make a real life so it's a game with real life characters, so the FMV format, how hard was it?
I'm going to actually answer that in two parts.
Okay.
So the filmmaking part, because really the game is, it's there's the film clips that you watch, and that's the filmmaking. Then there's the world and the environment that you interact with, and that's kind of the game development. So from the filmmaking part, the particular stories that I tell, not just with case files, with anything, I typically try to tell very real, grounded stories, human stories that really require the actors to just portray honest interpretations of that character. And so a lot of that comes from the casting process, doing auditions and trying to find the right person, not just the way they look, but also just, are they authentic in their performance? And then rehearsals are a very important part. I always do rehearsals, and what that does is it allows me to, well, for one, see where the cast members are at with their interpretation,
I see.
provide direction, talk about backstory. I think it's also important for a character in a film or an FMV, especially the nature of ours, that I think it's important for the actors to understand their backstory, even if that backstory never comes up in the film or the FMV, but at least it gives them a deeper understanding of who is my character, how did they grow up, what kind of jobs have
I
they
see.
had, what kind of relationships have they had, schooling, blah blah blah, and it just gives them a much more complete picture, because all of us as human beings are so much, right? We've
True.
got so much experiences in every which way possible, and so I really try to have the actors have that, and then I find that when we do all of that and we get to the actual filming part, um, they know the characters, they know the material because we've done the rehearsals, and it actually becomes much easier. But the only reason it becomes much easier is because we put in the work before. We put preparation
I
work
see. I
beforehand.
see.
I've actually worked on things as an actor, um, and a lot of different things. And I've actually had things where there was literally no rehearsal. We just, you get your script a week or so before, and you show up and you do your scene, and and that's fine. That's the job I get, and I do it. But you know, I'm only going to give my interpretation of the character and of the scene because that's all I have. I don't have
True.
any
True.
other
True. True.
backstory or anything. So I've created it for myself, but it may not necessarily match what the director was thinking because I don't know what the director was thinking. We didn't have that time beforehand. So from that perspective, I think a lot of preparation is really important when doing work with live actors. Especially when you want it to come across as authentic. And then the game development side of it, was very hard at first. Because I didn't know game engines, I didn't know C# programming, but I was determined to learn it because it was the only way that I could create what I wanted to create. I was forced to learn it. Um, but again, there's little by little, right? You don't have to learn it all overnight. I just kind of learned the things that I needed as I needed them. So it just made it more manageable. I didn't approach it from like, oh, let me learn Unity. That's not how I looked at it. I looked at it like, okay, the first thing I need to do is set up a video player in Unity. Let me learn how to do that. Okay, now I need to learn how to play the video in Unity and pause it. Let me learn how to do that. So it was
See.
always like task based, and so and through over the years now I've done so much that now I do know Unity in way more capacities than just FMV. Um, but yeah, a lot of it is just taking things in smaller chunks. And in regards to the film side of it, preparation is really critical. Because one other thing, actually, with the FMVs, the way that I'm doing them is they're all single take, right? So that's very, very different from what I'm used to in the filmmaking world, I'll have a scene and we'll get like a wide shot, a close up of this actor, close up of that actor, an insert shot on this, whatever. And so we're doing things in smaller
I
bits.
see.
And it's okay if someone in a close up messes up a line because I can just use another close up,
I see.
or I can cut to the wide shot. But with the case files, because it's meant to be like real life interview in a police station, it's all one take. It's almost like theater, right? So we have to be prepared. We really, really have to be
I see.
prepared because otherwise we're going to be like, if someone screws up in a take, guess what? We have to do the whole thing over,
True.
period, because it's an all or none. So again, preparation can make the actual filming part much easier because otherwise it's going to be a very frustrating experience if people are not very well prepared. Um, and so the filming becomes easier, but it's only because of that preparation work
I
beforehand.
see. I see. Thank you. Thank you again for the question and the answer. Thank you. Oh, there's also two more questions from me. Okay, let me translate it. how hard was it to find the perfect actors for all the characters that are in the game? For example, like the adrenaline addict person in the trailer, and also like the detective person in the game.
Um, it is well, the detective is easy because I played the detective,
Okay.
so that was easy. But the other characters, I'll be honest with that. It's more challenging now. So now I live in New Mexico.
Okay.
New Mexico is not nearly as big as a film hub as like Los Angeles or New York. So living in Los Angeles, that's literally where everybody around the world comes to act. So there's a much larger pool of people to pull from. But now being in New Mexico, that pool is much smaller, which does make the job a little bit harder. So a lot of that has to come with um, and let me be clear. I don't want to like finish the talent here, but there is objectively less actors here. That's just a fact. And so because of that, there's less people to pull from, which means that sometimes I'll have to, identify an actor that has potential, right? They may not in the audition nail it, but I see, okay, with some direction and some rehearsal,
I see. I see.
this person can get there,
I see.
So there's a lot more trust in the process. I have to trust that even if this person isn't where I need them to be for the final product, I trust that they can get there.
I see.
And I can learn that through the audition process. And I didn't really have to do that in Los Angeles because Los Angeles, there'd be so many people that it's just much easier, when you have a lot of people to cast from. You can, you'll the chances of you finding that right person without having to do much more work is much easier. But on the flip side, what I love, and actually had this experience with one of our actors on the most recent one, is he actually sent me a really beautiful note about how appreciative he was to work on the project because I allowed him to grow and develop and become a better actor. So not only did I give them the opportunity to act in a game, which is obviously pretty cool from an actor perspective,
Sure.
but he also became a better actor. So like that warms my heart. It's like I got to also it helped me because I need the cast members and I need good cast members, but knowing that I also help them is great. So I hope good things come, that they keep acting because they are a great actor, but they were one of those that it was a trust, it's like they're not there yet, but I know they can, so it does become a little bit harder. You have to be a little more speculative, like I think I can get this person there. When you're casting in an area that isn't necessarily known for having a lot of actors, which most of us live in areas that don't, so we do have to, again, yeah, just to be a little bit more speculative as to what you think you can do with that actor, and then hopefully get them there. That's the trust part.
I see. Thank you. Thank you again, by the way, for the question and the answer. Thank you. Okay, and the third question from Minnie is that how did you balance all those people in order to have the same vision when you were making your game? That they are lining up with each other into one vision of the game.
Yeah, so that's a very easy answer. We all meet. It's
Okay.
as simple as that.
Okay.
So three, no, four of the cast members, including myself, were based here in New Mexico. One is based in Colorado. Let's see, Colorado. Yes, Colorado.
Okay.
So we decided that we would meet on Zoom, and I did this with the other project as well, with the first case files.
I see.
We also had someone from Colorado and from New Mexico. So what we do is I always have a cast meeting before we do anything. So everyone meets each other. We all talk about what our roles are, and then I share the vision with all of them in
I
the
see.
group so
I
that
see.
we're all 100% on the same page. If there's any questions, they can ask it. We clear it up. And so the goal is by the end of the meeting, all of us on that call know where we're going, and each individual knows what their part that they need to do in order to satisfy the larger vision.
I see. I see.
Communication, again,
True,
communication.
true, true, true. What we were talking about before. Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you again for the question and the answer. Okay, so for my question, next question would be, what about the future? You mentioned like you are still like planning to make FMV games, but you still like also planning to make other games, like other genre oriented games. Do you like already have some story ideas for those games that you mentioned?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
So
okay,
the immediate that we're actually already in the middle of. Well, actually, first I do want to just do one quick plug.
okay.
Timing is actually really cool because Case Files Behind Closed Doors is actually having the PS5 release in
Okay.
3 days on November 7th, which is really cool. So it's just it features a much faster load times, higher resolution, all that. It's just improved for the PS5. So I'm actually excited about that. Um, in terms of the new projects, in the immediate right now, we're literally in the process of casting. Story development is the third case in the Case File series,
Okay.
which is called Case Files Internal Affairs. It's a much more ambitious than the previous two. A larger cast, a lot more evidence, but the format is still basically the same in terms of development. Where
See.
come up with the story, write the screenplay, casting, and that's kind of we're in the middle of all of that right now. So we're literally looking at actors. But then yes, we have quite a few projects that have been kind of tucked away in the past that were originally film projects, actually movies. And one in particular, well, we have a movie and a book. So we have two things. My wife actually wrote a book, and then we have a movie. And again, these are things that were kind of tucked away for a while that we're realizing we can actually turn into games. But these will not be FMV. And one of them, in an ideal world, and this is the funding aspect, would be kind of similar to Life is Strange
Okay.
series.
Okay.
3D
Yeah.
rendered world, 3D characters. There wouldn't be necessarily branching stories though, but it would be more mechanically it would be like that.
I see. I see. I see. I
Um,
see.
um, the other alternative, because it's much more affordable, is to do it in a way that's like Earthbound.
Okay.
So totally different approach, but top down 2D character, party based. But either way, like, yeah, we're looking at diving into non FMV
I see.
related games, which I think is going to be fun because, for the most part, everything has been, FMV, and you can do a lot when it's sprites on a screen or 3D models. It's much easier, for example, to blow up a bridge in with 2D, explosion than it is,
True. True.
in
True.
a movie and have to hire a visual effects
True.
artist
True.
and
True.
blah blah blah. So you can be way more creative. If we want a spaceship that flies, to another planet, it's much easier to have someone just draw the spaceship and then you can program it to fly. So doing it in a game format gives us way more flexibility. Because one project, I compare it to Stand by Me, the movie Stand by Me, and the movie The Goonies, two kind of you know pop based classics from the '80s in terms of kids adventure films. And since it's an adventure film or adventure story, doing it in a game format again gives us so much freedom as to how we want to do it, as opposed to doing it as a film. So um, that one, we're building prototypes, systems that will be used in game, like dialogue systems, inventory systems, items, and things like that. And then the next step would be plugging the story into that. So, and then also finding an artist, whether we go 2D or 3D. Either way, we do need a modeler or a 2D artist. Um, so yeah, so and that's where the vision part. Like I have a very specific vision for that one kids adventure game. Uh, it's going to take some time to find the right artist because it really needs to line up with that vision. I don't want it to just look like any other 2D type game.
Yeah.
Um,
Understandable. Yeah. That
Yeah,
makes
there's
sense.
a unique look that I'd like to see.
I see. I
But
see.
yeah, we've got again, the third case in the case files is already in development, already moving forward, and that'll come out next year.
Okay.
And then we've got these other two projects. I can't give you a time frame on them, but they're in pre-development. Say.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all those informations. Thank you. So my closing questions, one of the closing questions would be, do you think like you found yourself in life by now making games and combining your love and your job of making movies and games? Do you think like you're in the right position of your life? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And the reason that I can answer that is, if I were fortunate enough to just do whatever the heck I wanted, um, I'd still be doing this. So yeah, I think the only addition, and it's a more of a financial one, is I would do more traveling, like world traveling.
See?
I do love to travel, um, but that's really the only kind of thing that I would add to my existing life that's lacking. Yeah, games are it's like from a creating perspective, because traveling is traveling, not necessarily creating, but from a creating perspective, why games are so awesome and why I'm so happy that I found the confidence to learn the development side of things, um, because I can tell literally any story, and not only that, but I can truly put the player into those stories and let them make choices, let them advance things, let them interact with the world and the characters, on their own terms. Things that I can't do in a movie. A movie is always on the terms of the director. You're going to see exactly what I want you to see. You're going to hear exactly what I want you to hear. And that's okay, if there's a singular vision of that story, but I love to put the ownership on the consumer. And I've always wanted to do that. Even in my films, I tried to do that,
I
even
see.
though it's way, way harder. Um, but in games, I truly can do that, and it's awesome. And so, no, I wouldn't change it. And yes, I've definitely found where I want to be,
I see.
even if it isn't the most financially viable. It's
No, it
it's
makes sense. It totally makes sense what you
personally
just
viable.
said now. Yeah.
It's personally satisfying,
I see.
and that's important for me too. Is fill my soul. You know.
I see. If you would happen to choose, or if you would need to choose between movies and games as a creator, which one would you choose?
Oh, games, no question about it.
Okay.
Yeah, easy. Yeah, because it's also too. It's the when I have free time, which it's not very often, but when I do, I always think, okay, what do I do? Play games. you know, that's the world that I love. The only thing that had stopped me from doing that before is was just a not very productive mentality of, oh, that's too hard.
I see.
That requires a certain type of skill set that I don't have.
I see.
Oh, okay, you may not have it, but go get it. Especially with this age of the internet, there's tutorials and forums
True,
and
true,
places
true,
where you can ask
true,
questions for everything.
true,
If the excuse is, oh, I don't have that knowledge, that to me is a poor excuse,
true,
especially in this age
true.
of easily
You just have to
accessible
search for
information.
it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's fine. No one's born with all the knowledge they need.
True,
You
exactly.
have to acquire it,
True.
So, but now that I've acquired it and know where to look when I'm stuck, because I don't know everything, I get stuck. Heck, sometimes I forget things that I've done like 20 times. I'm like, wait, how do you type that again? I just love to look it up. And that's okay. I know where to look it up. I find it and boom, I answer my question. So, now that I know where to find that information, I've acquired that knowledge, and I don't have a fear of that knowledge, and I don't have a poor mentality that I can't do something. I am, yeah, again, I'm right where I need to be, and I love it. I love playing games. I love making games. I love telling stories. So it all comes together in the game making experience.
Thank you for that. Okay, before I will go into my final question, do you think like there is a topic that we haven't touched and you would like to talk about?
Um, that's a good question. I don't necessarily know if it's a topic, but I do think, um, things that are worth pursuing, our
Okay.
so-called dreams,
Okay.
our passions, our interests, whatever that may be. Uh, you know, things can be achievable. Maybe not at the scale that you're hoping, maybe not with the amount of audience that you're hoping. But there are always ways to pursue our dreams, our passions, our interests. Um, and sometimes what we have to do is just get out of our own way. Like we can be our biggest obstacle
True.
ourselves.
True.
And I think for anyone who's watching this that, is considering pursuing something and it seems hard, it seems daunting, it might even seem impossible, try to think about how can you manageably do these things, even if it's at a smaller scale, even if it's just, you have an idea for this large story. Okay, well, just write a short story.
True.
You know, you have an idea for this epic game. Okay, well, just prototype one mechanic. That's it. And kind of build from there, and just you know remove that fear. Remove that fear because, as I said earlier, like regret tastes really bad in my mouth.
True.
I don't like the taste of regret. Um, and we all have regret. If we're human, we have regret. We've done things that we wish we could have. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to be at a point where, I'm very old in life. Well, I do want to be very old in life, but I don't want to be at a point where vision is poor. I'm too weak to type. I can't, where I physically can't make the things that I wish
True.
I had
True.
done.
True. Very true.
I can do it now, regardless of how impossible it seems. I can at least attempt, and that's again the best you can do is the best you can do.
True.
And
True.
as long as you're doing that, removing the fear, I just want people to try to pursue their dreams, passions, and interests, whatever that is, because it just enriches the world,
Exactly.
with more art, with more
Exactly.
stories, with more games, more movies,
Exactly.
more music. It just enriches us.
That's
It
really
gives
the
us new
storyteller in you. I can
experiences.
tell you that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my parting words to everyone is
You were reading in
try.
my mind because I wanted to ask as a final question that what would be your advice for developers who are
That
starting
is that is
in
my
their
advice.
journey. Yeah, thank you.
Is try.
Thank you
Try.
for that.
That's it. Just try. Because you don't want to look back and say, "Oh, I wish,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
wish, I wish, I wish."
Exactly.
I'm old enough to know what that feels like on a major level, and it's not a good feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your honesty and for your time. And thank you for the question as well from Minnie. Thank
Yes.
you. So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And it was really a pleasure and I feel very honored that you
And
joined.
thank you, and thanks for everyone that tuned in with us. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah. Like I said, I will need some more of your minutes, but for those who tuned in now at today's episode, thank you for watching us and don't forget to try out the games that our friend here made and also wait for the next games, right? In the future.
Yeah.
Don't be harsh with your opinions. That's the learning part of our story today. Please
Be
don't be harsh.
constructive. Be
Yeah,
constructive.
exactly, exactly,
That's
exactly.
the
And
big
let
thing.
us know
It's
how did
okay if
you
you don't like something, but help me understand why, and more
exactly.
importantly, help me understand what could have been done better.
True, true, very true. So yeah, thank
Good
you
suggestions.
everyone for watching us live here. Or if you will be watching back the VOD or the edited version of this interview later this year at YouTube. Thank you everyone and have a nice day or night depending where you live. Bye bye. Bye bye.